Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on New Zealand Sports Radio, your best way to start the day up to speed with all of the important sports news. It is the 1st of May. Happy May, everybody. We've made it this far. And in sports news today, we have players scared to go back to training, players scared to go back to playing. We also have a coach who has not been retained, even though his team will still be playing. And the America's Cup team have started up again. Let's start with that football news then. And over in the UK, or over in England to be more precise, Manchester United striker Sergio Aguero has come out and said that the players are scared to go back to playing. With obviously the players who've got sort of children and families. This is after yesterday we spoke about the FIFA medical officer saying that the season should be cancelled and they shouldn't go back to bringing out or playing the rest of the seasons. The Premier League was suspended on the 13th of March and it has 92 fixtures remaining. So I have to see which way they go. They are meeting today to have a talk about how they go forwards. But some of the hygiene things that they are talking about doing: players must arrive at training grounds in kit and wear masks at all time. Training in masks, interesting. They must not shower or eat on the premises. If clubs want to provide players with food, it must be delivered as a takeaway to the players' cars. Only essential medical treatment would be allowed. All medical staff in full PPE, and all meetings and reviews must take place virtually and off-site. So it all does appear like there are some interesting ideas there. If you've got people running around and tackling each other and pushing around in penalty boxes, but you're not allowed to sit down and have a meeting sitting 1 meter apart. Interesting that there does appear to be some sort of conflict with that. Let's be honest. Des Buckingham is the All Whites coach for the Olympic team. The Ollie Whites coach. He has not been retained for the Olympics, even though it has been been delayed by postponed a year. So he has his contract will not be renewed and ends at the end of August, obviously when it was originally happening. The letter says they have support of the 24 players. There was a letter of support from the 24 players to New Zealand Rugby asking for him to be retained for another 12 months. But that has obviously not been heeded. And the All Whites head coach will now take over the position of the men's under-23 head coach as well from the 1st of September. And obviously with the reduction in international games, you can understand that he has time in his hands to do that. I'm going to hand you over to Stephen now, and he's going to take us through the birthdays.
Good morning, Paul, and good morning, everybody out there. And birthdays today from Liverpool to All Whites, born in Iowa, USA, to the New Zealand Swimming Hall of Fame, and finally from swimming to administration, and that's where we start. Dave Gerard is a sports administrator, sports medicine specialist, and a former Commonwealth Games swimming rep. As a competitive swimmer, Gerard was a specialist in the butterfly stroke, winning the national 110 yards title from 1962 to 1968, excluding 1964, and the 220 yards title for 10 consecutive years from 1960 to 1969. As a representative at the Olympic Games, Gerard competed at the 1964 Summer Olympics. He also represented New Zealand twice at the British Empire Games, Commonwealth Games, and at the 1966 Games in Kingston, Jamaica, where he won the 220 yards butterfly and bronze as part of the New Zealand 4x110 medley relay team. David Francis Gerard, OBE, born this day, 1st of May, 1945 in Auckland. Dave is 75 today. Now, Dave pretty much covered the full gamut: a champion swimmer, sports doctor, Olympic and Commonwealth Games team selector, and he's also been the New Zealand team chef de mission at the Olympics. We move along to Anna Wilson, who is a United States-born swimmer from New Zealand. Wilson represented New Zealand at the 1994 Commonwealth Games in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada in 6 events. Later in the same year, she competed at the World Aquatic Championships held at Foro Italico in Rome, Italy. Wilson represented New Zealand at the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. She competed in 5 events: the 4x200 meter freestyle relay, the 100 meter breaststroke, the 200 meter individual medley, the 400 meter individual medley, and finally the 4x100 meter medley relay. Wilson is New Zealand Olympian number 747. She was also inducted into the Hall of Fame at Swimming New Zealand. Anna Louise Wilson, born this day, the 1st of May 1977 in Iowa City, USA. Anna is 43 today. And finally, Clint Gosling is a former association football goalkeeper who represented New Zealand at international level. Gosling made his full New Zealand debut in a 1-1 draw with Fiji on the 20th of October 1984. He played a total of 66 times for his country, including 39 unofficial matches, which were A internationals. Gosling gained his final cap against Australia on the 6th of June 1993. Following his playing career, Gosling remained at Newcastle United Jets as a goalkeeping coach until being dismissed by the club in 2011. He continues as a goalkeeping coach on a part-time basis for the New Zealand national teams at all levels. Clint Gosling, born this day, the 1st of May 1960 in Liverpool, England. Clint is 60 today, and that's in birthdays today. And that was a shocking attempt at a Liverpoolian accent, Paul.
That it certainly was. Happy birthday to them, and hopefully they all stay safe. Moving on to rugby news, and New Zealand Rugby is weighing up whether it takes a $15 million payout from World Rugby. The thing is that this is an advance on a payment that they would normally receive at the end of the 4-year Rugby World Cup cycle, and so basically they can either take it now or they can take it in 3 years' time. But this is not extra money that is available. This is just early money to keep things going. With Brett Impey saying they're in survival mode, I guess there is a fair chance that they will be looking at taking that cash, even though they realise they won't get it in 3 years' time. They're looking at 3 scenarios at the moment, whether no rugby, a domestic-only competition, and some form of international footy are the 3 options they're looking at. You've got to say that the only international football rugby that looks like being possible at the moment would be against Australia and the Wallabies, if they do have that. If we do have that sort of Australasia bubble that is being suggested. All other international rugby this year, you've got to say, looks highly unlikely to be from our point of view here at New Zealand Sports Radio. Also, they elected in senior executive Jennifer Kerr, Left Field Live Supports Agency Chief Executive Bart Campbell, and Pango Productions founder Bailey McKay were all elected to become new board members. They're replacing Peter Keane and Andrew Golightly on there. So it looks like the board has been extended by 1 extra person. Ben Darwin did an interview yesterday. Now, Ben Darwin is one of the founders of Gainline Analytics. I had a chat with his partner yesterday, with Simon Strachan, and that long talk interview will come out on Monday. And he looked at the he was talking about the review that's happening, and he says that Super Rugby is why the All Blacks have dominance, and that New Zealand Rugby has to be careful about how it looks at restructuring itself. The fact that they have 5 teams going up into 1, he says, is one of the reasons that the All Blacks have that dominance. about all the connectivity that all those players have, how much they're used to playing with each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how that review that's going on happens. But as I say, join myself and Simon for that interview on Monday at 2 p.m. Where Simon will talk about a lot of the concepts that Ben Darwin is talking about and the reasoning behind his thoughts. Hugh in the live chat there says, is there any chance that Pacific Island could be involved in international rugby too with New Zealand and Australia? Well, as they have also ring fenced and got their cases down, that is obviously that would actually be a possibility. The only problem for the Pacific Islands would be that a majority of their players, international players, are probably stuck in Europe in isolation currently. So it would be domestic based only players. Which would mean they wouldn't be at full strength by any stretch of the imagination. But anything would be good to see, giving them extra experience, let's be honest. Now I'm going to hand you back to Stephen, who will take you through our rugby league news.
Yeah, thanks again, Paul. A couple of really good stories out of the NRL this morning, but we will start with the one that I have in front of me. NRL stars are reportedly planning to boycott a return to training on Monday in solidarity with the New Zealand-based Warriors. Now, both the Sydney Morning Herald and Channel 9 reported that players had a phone hookup on a Wednesday night with the Rugby League Players Association, where they agreed not to go to training on May 4th, throwing a spanner in the works of league's plan to restart its season on May 28th. The players are considering the decision because no new pay deal has been finalised between them and the NRL, even though they were promised that would be delivered earlier this week. Nine reports the NRL has now told the players a revised pay structure won't be given to them until next week. This is because commercial complexities involving negotiations with TV partners Nine and Fox after a broadcast deal was reached for a 20-round season. The uncertainty around pay caused Warriors players led by Roger Tuivasa-Sheck to question their next move. The NRL has applied for special government exemption, yet to be officially granted, for the Kiwi side to fly into Australia, where they would spend 2 weeks in quarantine. Now, none of this happens unless the pay deal goes ahead. And just finally on the story, senior players from Roosters and Melbourne Storm, including Queensland captain Cameron Smith, have backed the Warriors' stance. And then finally, well, here we go. For all the talk about solidarity, not everyone is entirely happy about what is unfolding with the NRL players threatening to revolt. Now, James Hooper, who is a writer for Fox Sports, put together this piece, and it's an absolute beauty. So strap yourselves in. Here we go. Bring out the bearded lady. The NRL's May 28th return is in danger of turning into a sideshow exhibition out of Ripley's Believe It or Not. From unregistered firearms to TikTok videos on Anzac Day, and now the latest doozy, a player revolt on returning to training on May 4th if pay demands aren't resolved. Are the NRL players serious? It doesn't matter if you're Gordon Tallis, Andrew Johns, or Sam Burgess. In terms of what you've achieved on the field, in the court of public opinion, threatening to revolt is about as smart as taking a 12-gauge shotgun to your kneecap. There are currently 3.92 million Australians, or 27.4% of the workforce, unemployed or underemployed as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of NRL head coaches, there is Wayne Bennett, Paul Green, John Morris, Dean Pay, who have all stood down without pay. And then the likes of Trent Robinson and Michael Maguire, who have accepted pay cuts. In Clubland right now, the 16 CEOs are currently working through a list of staff cuts. Despite all the sacrifice, adversity, and hardship being experienced around the globe, up until now, Rugby League had remained united. Yes, the players are the product. Yes, there is no show without the players, but there's also money if the players refuse to return to training. Yep, no play, no pay. The rumblings about player revolt returning to training field started on Wednesday night when interim CEO Andrew Abdo told RLPA delegates during a phone hookup players would receive 70% of their wages this year, in this calendar year. In simple terms, if you're on 100,000, you'll be receiving 70,000. Better than nothing, right? Or maybe not in the case of the players. Yeah, you really do have to wonder what's going on, because I'd still play for 70k for crying out loud. Now, just before I head off from these NRL stories, and I'll see you again tomorrow, up behind me I've got a whole lot of jerseys on the rack behind me, predominantly rugby jerseys. But if you have a club that you support, send me your jersey and I will send it back to you. But I just want to highlight your club if there's a little bit of a story.
Really?
And even if you want to give your club some sort of, I don't know, a little bit of promotion during these lockdown times, I think it's an ideal opportunity. Don't you say, Paul?
No, absolutely. We'd love to get the different jerseys up, but I'm not sure whether we want to be sending them back again. We'd love to keep them. To be honest with you, thank you very much, Stephen, for your update on the league. Moving on to other news then. In America's Cup, Team New Zealand have got themselves back on the water with their smaller test boat. They've had four sailors out there taking it out. Grant Dalton says that it's important that they have the test boat during their build. They've lost about 15% of their build time on their second boat, and they need to make that up. But part of that is also the research and development that happens at the same time. Basically the workers will be, or the boat builders will be running extra shifts to make up that time, because their three competitors have all managed to keep doing some sort of building over the last few weeks. Also, all those people who are on the boat were wearing those location devices that we talked about the other day to make sure that they kept their physical distancing whilst sailing. And they will get alerted, and also contacts traced as well. So they're using technology there. Luna Rosa over in Italy have also managed to get their boat out on the water, and they were talking about the full-size boat here, but again, they only have 5 people on that boat, and they've replaced the grinders with electric motors so they can carry on testing. So yes, some innovative ways to keep these boats on the water, to keep the development plans in place for the America's Cup. In thoroughbred racing, there had been some concerns around the stakes that were going to be available, and they've decided now that all the stakes will be a flat $15,000 initially, and this was considered to be a working rate. Over in the trots, they're at a lower level. Their minimum stake has been $7,000. That's going to increase to $8,500 this Friday, with 2 races at $12,000 at stakes there. So yeah, horse racing is slowly getting itself back, and obviously it has lots. Those stakes are going to be down as marketing and sponsorship dollars have been cut, and also obviously they don't have the same people coming through the gates either. Moving over to the Australian National Basketball League, and we've mentioned that they had to do a pay cut and that players were allowed to get out of their contracts if they wanted to. But what has happened here, we expected that there would be very few players who would do that, because where else could they go play? But MVP Bryce Cotton has decided to cancel his contract with the Perth Wildcats, or opt down his contract. Sorry. So he is going to be. He would have been. Yeah, his contract would have been cut by 50% for next season. So the 27-year-old American has decided that he will be heading elsewhere to try and to play basketball. Unfortunately, we'll have to see. The deadline is the 4th of May, so we do have a few more days for other players to opt out. We'll see how many other players decide to do that as well. Heading over to Europe, where we talked about yesterday that all professional sports had been banned until September, but the Tour de France was actually due to start on the 29th of August. The French sports minister, Roxana Maraciu, sorry about the mispronunciations there, says the Tour de France has not been called into question, and that basically they have to come back with suggestions as to how they would handle it. So it looks like the Tour de France may go ahead still at the end of August. The ASO has chosen not to comment as yet. What they have done, though, they also organised the Vuelta España, which is the Grand Tour based in Spain, that was due to start with three stages in the Netherlands, but they have called that off now, and they're going to reduce their race by 3 stages. So it'll just be 18 stages in Spain this year. The Giro d'Italia, the third Grand Tour, is also looking at taking place in the latter part of the year. And you've got to say 3 Grand Tours taking place in such a short period of time, a bit like marathon running, is probably going to struggle with entrance. The Road World Championships still are looking to be held on the 20th to the 27th of September. And we've also still have got to reschedule their Monument one-day races of Milan San Remo, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the Tour of Flanders, and Paris-Roubaix, which will all be joining the I've gone blank. Sorry, the Tour de Lombardy in the latter part of the year. Tour de Lombardy being the 5th monument that normally takes place towards the end of the season. That brings you up to date with all of the important sports news. Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining me today. And Robert Bull in the live chat says, keep the Harvard jersey. It's the only spot of class on that wall. Really? Deary me.
Hi, Paul, just before you go, you also mentioned don't use the word hookups when it comes to NRL as well. I thought that was aptly put.
Well, yes, we might want to check that, but as well. And Hugh gets in talking about the rivalry in the America's Cup between Australia and New Zealand. Unfortunately, Australia doesn't look like they're going to have, or they're not going to have a vote in next year's America's Cup. That's a big shame. So thank you, everybody. Don't forget to join us.
Maybe the Ruby Princess.
Good morning. Sorry, Stephen?
Maybe the Ruby Princess.
Maybe get the Ruby Princess back on the water. Thank you. I'm sorry, I've got no idea what the reference is at all. So I'm just, I'm riffing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was a shock. That was a shocker.
Thank you, everybody. Don't forget to join us at 8 a.m. every morning for the morning sports briefing. And don't forget to like the Facebook page or subscribe to the podcast. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcatchers, and just search for New Zealand Sport Radio.